počakaj naprej!
Živijo, lepo zdrav vsem, jaz sem Matej, upam, da ste dobro. V tokratnem podkastu pa sva z Blažem zopet gostila zelo zanimivega sogovornika, Mikoma Bibinsa, podcasterja, blogerja, popularnega twitteraša, ki o Mavericksih piše in govori že celo večnost, in tudi človeka, ki je dolgo časa, že več let, opozarjal na to, da stvari v Mavericksih niso urejene tako, kot bi v takem klubu morale biti, opozarjal na mnoge težave, ki so sedaj prišle na plano. Zato je seveda Mike več kot primeren sogovornik. Z njim pa nismo spregovorili samo o dogodkih v zadnjem tednu, dveh, odhodih Donnieja Nelsona, Ricka Carlisla, Haralabosu Voulgarisu, drastičnih spremembah v klubu, temveč tudi o prihodnosti Mavericksov, koga bodo pripeljali na mesto Donnieja, kdo bo postal nov športni direktor, kdo bo postal nov predsednik, morda bo nekdo postal oboje, kdo bo nov trener, kakšne spremembe v postavi moštva jih čakajo poleti, koga lahko pripeljejo, kdo so prosti igralci in za koga bi morda lahko tradali. O vsem tem več v podu, mislim, da bo pogovor vreden vašega časa in poslušanja, in če je temu tako, bi vas samo zaprosil, če nam lahko še naprej pomagate z všečki in če se še niste naročili na naš podcast, da to storite in na YouTubeu kliknete potem še tisti zvonček, ki vas bo obvestil o vseh novih podcastih. Namreč že jutri sledi nov podcast z novim sogovornikom, ta teden tudi nov podcast o reprezentanci, bližajo se kvalifikacijske tekme za olimpijske igre, prihaja tudi podcast o Euru, podcast o Turu, kot bi rekel Blaž, ni da ni, zato da ne bom dolgovezil, se vam bom pred pogovorom z Mikom samo še enkrat zahvalil za všečke in naročnine ter seveda tudi komentarje, ki smo jih verjetno še najbolj veseli, tudi tistih kritičnih. Zdaj pa kar veselo nedelo in pogovor, ki sva ga z Blažem imela z Mikom Bibinsom. I'm really looking forward to this pod because today we're joined again by Mike Bibins.
Hello. Hvala, thank you for bringing me back.
Hvala for taking the time to join us. We had a great talk the last time, and I don't doubt it's going to be the same this time. You can find Bibs at Bibs Corner on Twitter, and you can listen to his podcast, The Outsiders, on all of your favorite podcast feeds. I'll put the links to the pod and Mike's Twitter account in the description of this pod, and let's just get into it. It's been a crazy week in Dallas, probably the most dramatic and monumental week in Mavs history. Arguably, Donnieja Nelson, Carlisle left, the whole Haralabosu Voulgarisu mess that came out. So I just like to start by asking you, what surprised you the most? We expected some changes, but something had to surprise you as well, even though you were one of the people that's been warning about a lot of the stuff we read about last week.
Right. So I think the only thing that was truly surprising, I won't say the only thing, the biggest surprise was definitely all the stuff that came out about Haralabosu Voulgarisu, basically having his hands on everything from free agency to trades to the draft to Rick Carlisle's lineups. Like, we knew he was hired, and I think most people forgot because he's not like a face. He's not a person you see often. But to find out that he was affecting everything, and I can't remember who had the story, but it was like one story where a team would call and talk to Donnieja Nelsona about a trade. They would talk to Haralabosu about the trade, and both of them would be on completely different pages. Like, it makes sense why we had so many trades almost happen, and then they end up like falling apart.
The Dragic trade, many speculated the confusion that came out of that trade, potential trade, might be the result of exactly what you're talking about. The confusion in the front office, not knowing who to talk to when it comes to the Mavs.
Exactly.
that was kind of surprising also for me, because on the outside, because we know the Mavs and how respected the franchise they are, and this kind of mistakes like the Dragic trade, this isn't something that we were used to from the Mavs. All this confusion and everything, we are more used to them having done silent deals, like you haven't heard anything about it, and then out of nowhere they make a trade, they make a signing, something like that. But that was really, really strange for me. And now that we know all these stories and everything, yeah, it makes a lot more sense why it happened like it happened. So
exactly, yeah, because like you said, it used to be silence. The Mavs just made a big trade, and then suddenly these past few years, it's been the Mavs almost had this trade, but it fell apart, and it's like, why are these things happening? And I guess now we know.
Yeah, the Haralabosu Voulgarisu thing is definitely extremely interesting, and all the stories that came out with it. The last one was that Boban starting in the fourth game of the Clippers series, if I'm not mistaken, that was supposed to be Voulgaris' idea. If we take Kato's and Amik's reporting seriously, and I think we should, Amik said that it was sort of you have to put in Boban in the starting lineup or else. It wasn't a suggestion, it was more of a command. And this is extremely surprising for me as well. A coach of Carlisle's caliber taking that. I said before Carlisle resigned, when those stories came out, if that's true, that Haralabosu Voulgarisu was actually dictating to Carlisle what he has to do in terms of rotations, minutes, starting lineups, and it wasn't a suggestion, it was a command, then I don't blame Carlisle for stepping down.
Exactly. I had suggested that he needed to go one way or another, and it's kind of tough to see him leave in that manner in one way, to feel like he was alienated, basically made to feel like he didn't have control of the team anymore. The result I'm okay with, but the way that we got there is a little upsetting for someone of his stature. And so that's, I mean, I might be getting ahead of myself, but that's why I don't care what the situation is. I think Voulgaris has to go regardless.
Haralabosu Voulgarisu, yeah, that's a Bond villain name if I've ever heard one. I mean, I can imagine somebody using a version of this name for a villain in a good action thriller. Yeah, it's extremely surprising, especially when we read about the power he has in the front office, behind the scenes. And the question now, of course, arises, Donnie left, Carlisle left, I'm sure some other people are going to leave, but could Haralabosu Voulgarisu stay?
So I think with Mark Cuban, for some reason, he thinks that he wants to try to control everything that he can't control, because most of the stuff that's been coming out has not been within his control. And we know that Bob's contract is ending, but Cuban keeps saying, we don't speak about internal matters or blah, 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 blah. I don't think there's a scenario where he can quietly fire him or quietly let his contract expire and he disappear. I feel like he needs to address it publicly, because the people are going to keep speculating until they know that he's either gone or that he's still there.
What do you think? There's more chance of him staying or going, if you would speculate?
If we are going to get a legitimate GM to replace Donnie and a new coach as well, I believe that him staying or going is going to be a factor. So I personally feel like if Cuban takes this seriously, this opportunity to reset the culture in Dallas, he has to go. And if he doesn't, right now I'm leaning 60-40. 60% he does go, 40% he doesn't. And that's knowing that Cuban is stubborn. And if he likes that guy, if they're like really close like that, it's going to be hard for him to swallow his pride and let him go, which I don't want to see, but I have to acknowledge that it's a possibility.
And we've also read how Luka feels about Voulgaris. It does seem like Voulgaris is the person that bothered Luka the most. At least the first Cato article indicated that much. And even all the misunderstandings he had with Carlisle are sort of in the shadow of the whole Voulgaris thing. So giving it 60-40, that's a lot of chances that he might actually stay. And from what we read and what Cuban said, he said, I don't want to misquote him, but I think I'll be pretty close if I paraphrase it. If Haralabosu continues having a role with the Mavs, his role with the Mavs won't change, which could, of course, mean he's going to stay or he's going to leave, but his role won't change if he stays.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that based on just because of that story coming out, which, thank you, Tim Cato, first of all. Because of that story coming out, I can't imagine a person walking into that meeting to be the next coach or GM and not asking whether or not he's going to be there. Now, they're putting the committee together to make selections for the GM. We know they brought Dirk in. We know Michael Finley's going to be part of those discussions. We haven't heard if Voulgaris is going to be in those meetings. So I feel like Cuban probably is letting his contract expire and just doesn't want to talk about it, which, again, is bad PR. I don't know who is on his team or what they're telling him, but they constantly give him bad advice on how to manage these situations.
Absolutely. I love the way you're saying Voulgaris' last name, because I read a good tweet. This Valarm Voulgaris MFer has to go from the Game of Thrones. And I love how you're saying his last name, like Morgulis. I mean, it's if there's a villain in the story, that's the name you have to give him. And it's kind of funny in the whole thing that, the guy that is supposed to be in the center, although we can just focus on the Haralabosu Voulgaris mess. There's an English expression, American expression I've heard on many pods last week. I've listened to yours as well. The fish rots from the head. In Slovenia, we have a similar expression, the fish stinks from the head. It's basically the same thing. And Cuban, I mean, not the Mavs. Cuban is the person who's responsible. The current situation is a result, and I think that's a consensus opinion, of Cuban interfering too much. Now he has to find a new GM / president. We don't know what the exact function of the new manager person in charge is going to be. And if that person is actually going to be in charge, a new coach has to be found. Cuban, like you mentioned, hired a firm, brought back Dirk as well to help with the PR situation. Right now, I think Dirk is going to be the public face. I don't know how many decisions he's going to be making, and I'm wondering what you think here as well. But we said Cuban is going to be the one making the decisions. How confident are you, Bibbs, that he'll make the right decisions?
If I'm being 100% honest, I can't be that confident in Cuban to make the right decisions anymore. I can be hopeful that he knows the opportunity that's in front of him and that the decisions he makes this summer and what the GM and coach are able to accomplish as far as luring free agents is going to determine how long Luka remains in a Dallas Mavericks jersey. And I would hope that he takes that completely seriously and does not try to maintain his control over the team that he's had for so many years. It's time for him to take a step back. Every time I say step back, I keep thinking about Luka taking step backs. But it's time for Mark Cuban to take a step back. I am hopeful that he does so, and I'm not usually the optimistic type, but I'm hopeful, and I have to put that energy out there until he makes the mistake, and then I'll be ready to call him out for it when it happens.
Because Matej was talking about Dirk, how much of an input do you think Dirk will have in all of this?
If I had to be honest, I don't know what kind of real influence Dirk is going to have. I expect he'll be in the meetings. I expect he'll ask some questions. But as far as is he going to be able to veto a choice? I don't expect he'll have that much power. I think it'll be more if Dirk agrees, we're good. If Dirk disagrees, then maybe we just need to sell him harder. I don't think he's going to have a final say or anything like that.
Yeah, it just feels like it's some PR stunt and nothing else. But I think that better PR would be just to fire Voulgaris and do all of that, not bring Dirk back, because I mean he did save this franchise many times, but I don't think he's gonna save it this time.
No, not at all. On my podcast, I even said, bringing Dirk back may calm down 20% of the fans, but it's not putting out the fires that have been started here. And I do think firing Bob, like you said, would go a lot farther as far as giving Cuban some good PR.
Yeah, this summer, I think in 5, 10, 15, 20 years might be looked at as the most important summer in Mavs history one day. And making the wrong decisions, like you said, Bibs, could mean Luka leaving someday. Woj just did a pod with Tim McMahon, I think yesterday it came out, where he talked about what's most important to Luka, and it's something everybody who knows him says the same thing. It's winning. He wants to win, and he wants to win a lot, like he's been used to since he was a little kid. And he knows that matters more than MVPs, All-Stars, endorsements, and everything else. Or better yet, he knows that winning brings all of that along with it. So Cuban has to do the job and bring in the right people. So let's talk about some names here. First thing is, of course, the GM or a president who's going to name a new coach. Bibs, we all know your coaching preference. You've been talking about Coach Mosley. Actually, we talked about Coach Mosley on the night when he got to coach instead of Carlisle when he tested positive. And we saw the reaction of the players after the game, the way they reacted to Mosley's first win. And Luka actually gave him the biggest vote of confidence possible by saying he could be the head coach. So we know what Luka wants. I don't think he has any preferences as far as GM or a president is concerned. I don't think he will involve himself even a little bit in those decisions, but I think he's hugely invested in who the new coach is going to be, understandably, of course. So how do you think this is going to work, Bibs? Is Mosley going to be the choice of the new GM president who will have to precede the naming of the new coach?
Right. I think for me, there's a very slim chance that he's not the coach. We talked about it, like you said earlier, that he's one of those guys that is considered next up to get a job. There's like 8 jobs open. I don't quote me on that. Maybe 6 to 8 jobs that are going to be open this summer. I can't imagine him not having one of them. And if he's going to be a head coach in this league, why not on the team where he's already built relationships, or with the franchise that he's already built relationships, especially most importantly with Luka. And the last part of that relationship with Luka part, I've saw a lot of people saying, oh, you can't just have a coach that's friends with the players. But if you look at Luka and Mosley's interactions, it's not all buddy-buddy stuff. Like, he gets on Luka. When Luka's in a rough spot, he'll go to Mosley for advice and things like that. Like, that's the type of relationship you want a player to have with their coach, in my opinion.
Bibs, you reminded me of the viral clip of Mosley sort of friendly slapping Luka. That thing so early on in their relationship just shows best how comfortable Mosley is with Luka, and Luka is with Mosley as well. So, yeah, if Luka gets a vote and if Luka has any real power, then it has to be Mosley. That will actually show how much power does Luka actually have, because we know what his choice is.
Yeah, it shows from their interactions that they have a more like father and son relationship than like two buddies. And I think that he contributed a lot towards Luka and his time in Dallas. And he could be a good choice in that regard.
Would you be happy with any other choice? We know Luka might not be, but what about you, Bibs?
So Mosley, I think, again, makes the most sense, not just because of his ability to communicate with Luka and Luka's respect and trust in him, but secondarily, he has great relationships with players around the league, like Tristan Thompson, who's an active player for the Celtics who don't have a coach, even publicly said that the Mavs should hire him. which just goes to show, like, I don't know if I've ever heard an active player say that a certain coach should get a job for another team. Like, I can't remember seeing that ever. So that just goes to show. And, like, if you watch him after every game, he's talking to players on the other team. He's shaking their hands, having conversations. Like, if you want to bring free agents in, that's having a coach that players like definitely goes a long way. So for me, like 99%, I'm in. The only other person that I would not immediately be mad at is Becky Hammon, because I feel like she also has been around a little while in the league. She's also well respected. And I mean, she's learning under Popovich. So his history speaks for itself, and his coaching tree speaks for itself. So that's the only other person I openly endorse. I think we do need a new face. I don't want some recycled coach to come in. So those are my two.
So somebody like D'Antoni wouldn't interest you one bit?
Not at all.
Okay. Because he will probably be looking for another job. As far as GM president position is concerned, do you have any preferences here? I've seen some really crazy, wild ideas or sort of wet dreams of Mavs fans of Masai Ujiri, but I don't think that's going to happen. He's got a great deal in Toronto and could get a better job somewhere else, just in terms of him making all of the decisions and knowing that he's going to be the one making all of the decisions, which in Dallas might not be the case. But somebody like Masai Ujiri would actually guarantee some sort of level of independence. If somebody like him would come, then we'd know that he probably wouldn't allow Cuban messing around in his business.
Exactly. If we're able to get Masai Ujiri, I think he's the obvious choice. The level of his business savvy is obvious based on the fact that he didn't renew his contract. He left his options open. So now he's in a situation where, you know, he can have a bidding war between multiple teams if he wants to. Whether or not he's serious about leaving Toronto, like, we just gave him a ton of leverage in whichever direction he wants to go. So if he ends up coming to Dallas, that to me tells me that Cuban is serious about making some changes. Cuban is going to be taking a back seat. And then as far as like any other moves, I trust Masai Ujiri fully. Like, I've been a fan of his since Denver in the early days, like read up on his history and how he got to the league. And I mean, he's an incredibly impressive guy. Any team would be lucky to have him running their business. And I really can't even think about any other candidates beyond that. I can say I don't want Michael Finley to get the job just because he's been in that front office for the past 9 years, and he's part of that bad culture that we're trying to get rid of, in my opinion. Like, I hate to say it because I love him as a man, but we gotta clean house on the interior.
What would be some of the traits you would be looking for in a GM besides him being someone new?
I would say most importantly is creativity. Being willing to take risks is going to be huge, because that's something that Donnie he had it at one point, but in the end, the past 10 years, there was not a lot of vision and creativity. And I don't know how much of that was Cuban's fault either, to be honest. I think that Donnie was great at identifying talent, especially overseas. But as far as these past 10 years, the moves have just not made a lot of sense. There's been a lot of hoping that just somebody falls in your lap versus strategic moves to put yourself in a position to actually get people, or to have players that you can trade to get a certain person. Cap space has not been the answer. We have to have tradable contracts. That's the key. So somebody that's smart with the money and the way that they design their contracts and things like that as well.
Yeah, and some teams are really good at it. I immediately think of the Heat and the way they orchestrated the Jimmy Butler sign and trade without any cap space at all. Mavs need that sort of organization, and many of us actually thought that they had it with Donnie, who, like you said, I mean, his basketball credentials, especially the international basketball credentials, what has Donnie done in Europe, not just in U.S. as an executive, as a coach on the Lithuanian team, getting the sponsorships as well, getting actually medals from Lithuania for his contributions to their basketball and stuff like that. He's done it all. And finding better people than Donnie and Carlisle in their positions, people who will have the authority, is going to be incredibly hard. And we already said it's the most important summer, and they really can't afford to make any mistakes. And I'm afraid they might. If they get Masai, I'm becoming incredibly optimistic. I'm changing my tune. But until we hear who's the new GM/president, yeah, I'm very cautiously pessimistic. And you, I'm guessing as well, Bibs.
I'm being cautiously optimistic.
Glass half full.
It might be my only chance to be positive about this team for the first time in a very long time. So I'm holding on to it. I'm remaining neutral. I'm not proactively expecting something bad to occur, though Cuban is definitely the type to make a bad decision here. I'm hoping he lets his pride get out of the way in this situation.
One of the things I've read as well, I've seen tweets of people, let's say, looking at it from a glass half full sort of perspective and mentioning the Clippers are now Western Conference finalists. Even without Kawhi, they managed to conquer the best team in the Western Conference in the regular season. And some Mavs fans are saying we were one game away from beating Western Conference finalists. The team is much better than we actually think it is. Is it? Or is it just that the Mavs have generational talent on their roster who managed to have a historically good series? Is that the only reason, or do Mavs need serious roster changes too, Babes?
Yeah, so that's one thing I don't like on Twitter. It's not the fans' fault, I don't think. I think when you don't win a playoff series for 10 years, you start trying to reach for things to have positive feelings about, like when I think 2014 when we pushed the Spurs to 7 in the first round and then they just kind of dominated everybody else the rest of the way. Are we going to say that we're the second best team in the league based on that? No. But there are people who argue like, hey, that was a really good year that year because we pushed them. I just think that in basketball, matchups matter. And if we match up well with one team and some other team doesn't, then that doesn't say that we're just as good or better than that other team. I think the Jazz would have blown us out if we just look at the way we played the Jazz this season. Yeah, we had that one game we won where Josh Richardson made every single three he took was 5 for 5, and Dorian Finney-Smith had like a career high, and Donovan Mitchell made like 2 for 18 or something crazy, and we won the game by 7 points. Like, everybody on our team was going out of their mind, and everybody on the Jazz was terrible, and we won by 7 points. We got blown out by 30 the other two times we played them. We might have won one game in a Jazz series, personally. I can't look at what we did against the Clippers and say that anything definitively about the team besides Luka is amazing, and nobody else on the team did enough for me to say I need them to stay. Like, every single other player is replaceable at the end of the day. Tim Hardaway Jr., his value comes in his ability to score, and he shot 39% from 3, I believe. He can get some tough shots off, but, Duncan Robinson can get some tough shots off too. And he's a free agent, and we could probably get him for a lot cheaper than we're going to get Tim Hardaway Jr. So at the end of the day, I actually went through the list of free agents. I think you mentioned we might go there later, so I might be getting ahead of myself. But there's 15 players that shot better from 3 than Tim Hardaway Jr. if we're talking about catch and shooting. So, again, nobody on the team besides Luka had anything to be proud of out of that series. Maybe Boban. Boban was pretty good for us in the last few games. But other than that, everybody can go.
By everybody, of course, you mean KP as well. Do you think he might get traded as well this season? Would you like to see him get traded in any case, or just in certain circumstances if Mavs get back enough? How far are you on the trade KP train?
If I can get cap space I'm fine. I don't necessarily need to get anything of value back. I wouldn't want to trade him for another guy who's often injured and has a huge contract. I think that would be kind of pointless. I want multiple players on smaller contracts. If it's the Pacers and we can get a Miles Turner, fantastic. If it's the Kings and we can get Buddy Hield, fantastic. If it's Golden State and we can get James Wiseman, fantastic. Like, if we can get back a big man that does the basic things like block shots and or rebound and catch dunks, I don't care if they're averaging 2 points a game for their career. I'll be more happy with that than to see Luka and KP not even barely acknowledge each other on the court ever again.
Mavs cap space situation is tricky. They have some player options. Josh Richardson has a player option. Tim Hardaway Jr. will be a free agent. What do you think is actually realistic for Mavs?
So that's one of those other situations where we have to almost wait to see who the GM is going to be. But I can imagine a new GM isn't going to come in and want to retain the same roster. That's part of why I don't want Michael Finley, because over the past few years, it's become a situation where it feels like the team is just too attached to all the players, like even the basic role players. They just have too much emotional attachments. You look at the trades we did this year. We traded the 2 guys that we just brought in. We didn't trade any of the guys that have been here a while. So I think a person coming in with fresh eyes is not going to have those attachments, and they're going to want to make their own mark. They're going to want to make their own imprint on the team, and the best way to do that is to renounce our rights to Tim Hardaway, to open up the money there, even if they intend to bring him back, to have more money to play with. And then if you can trade KP, if Josh Richardson opts in and you can trade him, that's another $30-something million that you can play with as well. So I think a new GM is going to want to do those things and build the team that they envision working around Luka. I think we have enough evidence to know what we need around Luka at this point.
And we've seen it on the national team as well. I mean, Luka just played his first national team game in a while, and he had shooters and a good rim roller, a good dive man. That's something he thrives around, pick and roll action. He just needs somebody attacking the rim. The vertical spacing Carlisle always employed seemed to have disappeared with KP at the 5. And that's something they do have to solve during this off season. But another position they sort of have to solve, or a player they have to get, is another ball handler, another guy who can actually handle the ball when Luka gets double teamed, and he's getting double teamed a lot, we know. And do you see here any names that might be interesting to you?
Yeah, so this is another part where I think we're going to have to renounce our right to Tim Hardaway. Kyle Lowry is the most obvious for me, and we know he has a relationship with Masai if he ends up being the GM. DeRozan, I think, qualifies as well if we're willing to swing for the fences. Spencer Dinwiddie, we've seen what he can do with the ball in his hands in the bubble last year. Obviously, he has an injury history, so that's something to consider there. Those are the big 3 off the top of my head. I'm going to take a deep dive into free agency. Actually, the next 2 episodes of the podcast, Reese and I are going to go through our dream free agency, as one of us will be the GM and the other person will veto things if we disagree. So I'm going to really dive into the free agent pool this week. And but off the top of my head, there's definitely plenty of options out there. And I do agree those are my 2 big needs: is a big man, a true big man, and a secondary ball handler that Luka can respect and defer to from time to time.
You mentioned DeMar and Kyle Lowry. Aren't you concerned about their age? And also, DeMar is, his 3-point shooting is, I don't know if he even throws any three-pointers in the game, and also his defense is, let's call it non-existent. And I mean,
I thought you're going to be more gentle, and then you went, let's call it just non-existent.
Yeah, I was thinking of going a little bit gentler, but then, I mean, you can't be, because there is no defense with him. And those are the two guys that you have to pay, and you'll have to pay them big money like you'll have to pay Tim Hardaway.
Right.
Do they improve the team as much that you would be willing to risk a multi-year contract? You already have KP that you have to deal with. Now, with those two guys, I mean, I know you said you're going to dive into this free agency and everything, but just, from the top of your head, I mean, is that something that doesn't concern you, or what's your opinion about that?
No, those are definitely legitimate things to be concerned about there. I think with Lowry, I was against him because of his age for a while, but just based on what he did this year, first of all, what we've seen from Chris Paul this year, I think for like 1 or 2 years, he could be a good stopgap until we, again, clear up some of the rest of this money, including KP, in the next few years, if we're unable to do it this year. I think as far as taking a risk on someone like DeRozan, that's where maybe get rid of Dwight Powell or whatever it takes to get some more money to play around with, then we can afford to pay a guy like DeRozan. As far as acknowledging his lack of defense, Tim Hardaway Jr. is pretty terrible on defense. I know he takes a lot of charges, usually not on his man, if I'm being honest, usually like fast break or something because he's not in the right positions. I think what DeRozan does on offense and being able to handle the ball and break down the defense is more valuable than what Tim Hardaway Jr. does for us, personally. And being able to kind of take over a game down the stretch as well. So it's not just all Luka all the time.
Yeah, but with Tim Hardaway, at least you get a little bit of shooting. I know we're talking about a secondary ball handler, someone who can organize a game, but I don't know. I kind of can't see DeMar DeRozan working in this team.
Blaž, if I just cut in, I think offensively on offense, I think Luka can play with anybody. Pretty much any capable ball handler, smart offensive player, and DeMar DeRozan is definitely that. He doesn't have a shot, three-point shot, but he's a very capable scorer from every other position on the floor. I think offense would be fine, but yeah, the defense is what concerns me much more, because we know that's been one of the problems Mavs had for the past 2 seasons. And yeah, I mean, if I use the cliche joke with DeMar DeRozan, he should be Amar DeRozan. No D's there. I mean, no. It's a cheap joke. I shouldn't even say.
Again, you have to have a GM that's able to, like, if we have Miles Turner back there, you can have a little bit less defense on the perimeter, kind of like the Jazz with Gobert. If you have a center that cleans up things, you can have less defense on the perimeter. I don't know. You would have to get creative. And I'm looking forward to kind of digging into the different options that are out there when I sit down with it this week.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that you should just bring Tim Hardaway Jr. back, because, to be honest, I'm not sold on him also. I think they are better players for this value and money, but this year's free agency is really terrible, to be honest. I mean, Tim Hardaway is probably 3rd, maybe 4th best guy that's available this offseason. And if Mavs only land with DeMar DeRozan, would that be a satisfying free agency for you?
No. Like, if we're just swapping out Hardaway with DeRozan, that's not enough for me. I think it maybe helps a little bit in clutch situations, but I don't think we truly raise the level of the team necessarily, unless Porzingis decides to start playing like he was last year, or I guess the year before this past season. Again, I think we have to make a lot of creative moves. I think a trade is going to get us more value than anything a free agency is going to do, including bringing back Tim Hardaway Jr.
What do you think is the time frame for a new GM to be appointed? The free agency starts at the beginning of August. We are at the end of June already, so there won't be a lot of time for planning.
So I read about Sportsology, the firm that Mark hired to help find a GM, and I believe they said the whole process usually takes about a month. I do believe they're going to have to speed that timeline up because a month is going to put us at the middle of July, which would give them like 2 weeks to plan for the draft and free agency and things like that. Because I think the draft is July 29th. Then the opt-in deadline is the 30th, if I'm not mistaken, which is when we'll find out whether or not we have to deal with Jay Rich's money. And then, free agency starts the beginning of August, I believe on the 2nd. And then you can actually sign people on the 6th. So right there, you're looking at 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks of the job, pretty much most of the work is going to be done. So I think they got to speed that timeline up. I would hope for something by the beginning of July versus the middle. Like speed that timeline up by a couple weeks.
Maybe this is why Cuban hasn't fired Voulgaris yet. He needs at least a shadow GM if they can't hire a proper GM until the free agency starts. So
let's hope that's not the actual reason, and they are just trying to do it or thinking of a way to do it as cleanly from a PR perspective as possible. One thing is certain, I think now Mavs are on the clock. Luka is going to sign his extension. After he signs his extension, which kicks in next summer, he's probably going to sign 4+1, get a player's option for the last year. I've heard some speculations it might be even a shorter contract. I don't even know if that would be possible, 3+1. And I think I've heard Windhorse talk about that, so I guess it's possible. I thought the rookie extension could be only 4+1. Do you know perhaps, Bibbs, is it possible that Luka signs 3+1?
I actually don't know the rules. I think as far as it goes, they say he's eligible for XYZ, but I don't know if it has to be that or you just get a regular extension type of situation.
Yeah, because when they're mentioning the 200+ million number, they're calculating for a 5-year contract. The contract could be shorter, 4+1. Well, let's not get too deeply into that, but the fact is that after this contract starts, we've seen Harden get a trade, demand a trade, and get a trade after 2 years of his last contract. So things are changing. This is a players' league. It's definitely the league where players have the most power everywhere in the world, talking football, soccer, for American fans, or any other sport. NBA probably is the league where players have the most power, and Luka superstars have even more power. How confident are you that Mavs can actually build a winning team, a true contender, within that time frame of 3 years, 4 at the very most, when his contract kicks in?
Well, I'm on record as saying Luka by himself taking another step is going to get us to the second round. Question is adding teammates that can get us, to the conference finals or pushing for a finals within that time frame. And that's another question. Like, I have to see who this GM is that we get before I can even answer that, honestly. I think it shouldn't be as difficult as far as the quality of the players. Like, I don't think you need to go build a super team to make Luka competitive. I think you just need competent, slightly above average guys, and maybe one other guy who can raise his level close to an all-star level. And then we're kind of in business. Like, we're a dangerous team at that point. I just hope that we don't get somebody that overthinks it as much as I hope we don't get somebody that's willing to barely scrape by in free agency and whatnot.
Bibbs, you said you expect Mavs to make the second round conference semifinals next season, just Luka improving. And when we talk about Luka, we often talk about all the positives, all the good things he does, but like his conditioning can get so much better. It's just crazy how much better can he be just by improving his conditioning. And I think playing for the national team might help him here. Dragic has been quoted a lot of times saying that he never started the season better, and he also became All-NBA and All-Star the year after playing for the national team during the summer. And there are other examples as well, like both Bogdanoviches talked about national team really improving their conditioning and keeping them in shape during the summer. But to get back to my question, second round next year, so conference finals the year after that and finals in the third year. I think Mavs have to make finals, have to be a finalist within 3 or 4 years. We already talked about that, Bibs, in the last pod, and I said if Luka is in the same situation as Giannis, having a really disappointing exit, first round exit like Giannis had last year against the Heat, if I'm a betting man, I'm betting against Luka signing the second extension in Dallas as well. So the progression ladder, how do you see it, Bibs?
I agree with you 100%. I think we have to start taking steps. Luka's not going to tolerate not winning. And Giannis has, we talked about it on the last pod, I believe. Giannis has a lot more reasons to be loyal to Milwaukee than Luka has to be loyal or faithful to Dallas. At the end of the day, he has to take care of himself. And if the team isn't showing him that they're serious about doing the things that they need to do to get him to a championship, then why he shouldn't stay. And I can't be a selfish fan and expect him to. Dirk, I think, spoiled Mavs fans into thinking that we can expect that of players. But the reality is these players have to look out for their own best interests. And if we bring in a puppet GM and Mark Cuban still pulling the strings with Bob, Luka's going to see that, and if we're still not able to bring free agents in, he's going to take care of himself. So, yeah, I do think we need to take steps. I won't necessarily say we have to get to the finals in that time frame, but we have to at least be on the doorstep, and we have to look like we can get there the following year for Luka to stay, I think.
Yeah, but, with Dirk, it never felt like there's a hurry to get to the finals. I mean, it kind of felt when they had Dirk that maybe because he's that kind of character or something like that, but I think it never was really about winning or stuff like that, just getting better, improving, taking our chances. But with Luka, it feels different. I don't know how to put it. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think with Dirk, I think it was 2003, was the first time we really looked like a dangerous team, and then Dirk got hurt in the playoffs. I think because Dallas had never gotten there before, that when we did get to the finals in 2006, it felt like, whoa, like maybe we actually do need to win a championship, or maybe we can win a championship. And getting that close and losing left a lot of hunger in Dirk. So I do believe for like that time period from 2006 to 2011 was the most pressure that the team had on them to win. I feel like that's the closest comparison I can put on this situation. Is like drafting Luka was like losing in the finals for this team as far as the pressure of, okay, we need to get there as quickly as possible again. And I do think it is like it was then, a 5-year timeline of let's get it done, starting now, basically. And in the course of his next contract, we have to get it done.
This is also where the whole Donnie thing and him being too comfortable kicks in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you have a top 5 player in the league on a $7 million contract, and basically they just wasted it. And that's, it's really hard to understand. And
a lot of missed opportunities already. Blush, like you said, they knew for 2 years they have a top 5 player, they have a superstar who can be the centerpiece of a championship contender, and they wasted the trade exception, the $20+ million trade exception they had. They could have absorbed Dragic into that trade, and again, we started with that, mentioned that supposedly the Haralabosu Voulgarisu fella is the one that actually nicks that trade. Donnie, that's the speculation. I don't know your opinion on that specific speculation, Bibs, but that Donnie wanted to trade for Dragic. Dragic is the sort of player that Donnie seems like he would have liked. And on the other hand, an analytics guy who just saw numbers thought he's obviously falling off, and then Dragic led Heat in scoring to the finals last playoffs. So that's where the whole analytics versus debate comes in. Your opinion?
100%. And I think for me, even if Voulgaris is the reason for like the Olenek trade falling through, all that stuff, I put on Donnie the poor money management still. Since 2011, it's been all about having cap space and just buying players. And that's just not how it works in the NBA. So every year we cripple ourselves and put ourselves in a position to have money to spend. But if you don't put a product on the floor that players want to play for, they're not going to come to your team. And the fact that they did that again this year in trying to make sure they had money for Giannis, because that's what the Seth trade was really about, was trying to have cap space. All the trades we did last year are all about cap space, just so you could lure Giannis, and thinking that Luka is all you need to lure Giannis, when, again, you for 10 years you have not put anything together besides drafting Luka that makes anybody take the Dallas Mavericks seriously as a franchise, as far as the players are concerned. So I think that's why I needed Donnie to go, because that way of thinking is way outdated. If a player wants to come to your team, there are ways to get them onto your team.
Yeah, I guess that you could say that Donnie made one good decision every 10 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you said
that's way too little for a successful NBA franchise. With Daniel H. or Pat Riley or, I don't know, Masai Ujiri, they make mistakes. They do make mistakes, but they made the right decision more times than they made bad decisions. And you can trust these guys that they will build something. But with Donnie, you couldn't really say that.
Exactly. And there it is. It's an unwillingness to keep taking chances. I think he did do that, like I said, in that time stretch between 2006 and 2011 when we won the championship, but that's because extra pressure was put on him. But in this league, you can't just let a year go by where you're not trying something. And it felt like Donnie, having been with the organization since 1998, he was by far the longest tenured front office person. The next longest tenured is Presti in Oklahoma City, who's been there for 14 years. Like, Donnie's been there 23 years. And then the next longest tenured, there's like 3 or 4 guys that have been with their team for 9. And then there's like 15 that have been with their team for 5 years or less. Like, this is not a place where you get to just sit there for 10 years and make one good decision. You got 5 years to run your plan. If it doesn't work, then we're getting somebody else.
And Mavs are getting somebody else.
We can basically just hope that the Mavs make the right decisions in the next month or so when it comes to GM and coach. And I guess fingers crossed, and let's see what's going to happen.
Let's see what's gonna happen, because from my perspective, after last week, anything can happen. I mean, I'm really not sure what their next moves are going to be. Predicting them is pretty hard when it comes to Mavs. Let's just hope that Mosley is one of the decisions. I'm pretty much set. Like, Babes convinced me. I'm a believer. I'm totally a Mosleyver. No, that doesn't work. But I'm hoping Mosley is going to be one of the choices, but there are many choices and decisions to be made. Bibs, thanks a lot for taking the time again to talk to us. Last thoughts about the whole thing? Do you have anything to add, or maybe something we forgot to ask you about?
No, I'm excited, I'll say. You know, I've been asking for these changes. I got the changes, and now it's just a matter of who's Cuban going to bring in. And I really hope whatever decision is made, I'm hoping he shows us that he's willing to take a step back and allow someone new, completely new, to do their job, and that this new era of Dallas Mavericks basketball is a change, and just, it's been hard being a fan for a long time. So I'm excited for the opportunity that's been placed before us, but there's clearly a way it can go wrong, and I'm just hoping it doesn't. But other than that, Blaj and Matej, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for coming. It was really nice talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. It's always a great conversation with you, and I'm hoping we're going to get to talk, and I think we're going to get to talk more Mavs in the future when they make those moves. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to talk about.
Most definitely. I'll be glad to come back.
And we'll be really glad to have you back and your perspective. Like I said, you've been talking and warning about this. You and other people on Twitter, Mavs Twitter, bloggers, independent media, let's call them, like Kirk as well. You really sort of predicted a lot of the things that happened or warned about the possibility of those things happening for years, not just since this season. And opinions like that should have extra weight now in the grand scheme of the media space. I definitely think a lot of people were validated and proven right.
Yeah, I don't like taking victory laps too much, but yeah, it does feel good to be a little vindicated. I'm willing to say the things that other people aren't willing to say because I expect that I'll be proven right over time, most of the time.
And you were. Blaj, any last words from you?
You said you won't be running any victory laps. I'm also a little bit concerned because, this is just the first step towards victory. So if they don't do it this right, I don't even want to. I mean, lottery hell for years to come. If Luka leaves, there's one thing we know for sure. If you lose a generational talent, you never get the same value back, no matter who or what you trade for, picks, how many picks you get. You get players like Luka Mavs once in 20 years, which is another mind-blowing thing that could be a whole another podcast. How the hell did they, after getting the Euro GOAT, undisputed Euro GOAT, got one of the 2-3 players that could replace Dirk as a Euro GOAT, and the one that probably has the best chance with Jokic and Giannis as well. That's the trio that might rule the league for a long time, which is also an interesting agenda, isn't it, Bibs?
I like how you did that.
Yeah, I couldn't help myself. Thanks again, Bibs. Blaj, thank you as well. We'll talk again real soon. We got some football this week coming as well. Euro is in full effect. We got a tour as well we'll be talking about, and more basketball with more guests. Did I forget something, Blaj?
No, I think you read the whole list correctly.
I did. So, thanks again, Bibs, and talk to you soon, real soon, hope, and looking forward to it already.
Yeah, thanks from my side. Bye.
Bye.